Hi, woman of God. My name is Carly, and thank you back for watching another video. What lies in your breakthrough, okay? Now, people of God, I know when we talk about obedience, when we talk about obeying God's word, obeying his commandments, and what he has written for us, to be not of lawlessness, but to be a woman of the law. He talks about obedience, okay? And I know when we tend to hear obedience, we're like rolling our eyes. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear about obedience. But from a woman that struggled with submitting to God, this is you. Today is your lucky day, okay? Because God sent me a message. He told me to go to Esther, and now I receive a revelation. Now, this revelation, I'm sure, has been taught before, but I just want you to see it in my eyes, okay? Because again, as a woman who struggled with obedience and who did mostly I wouldn't say I'm a rebel. You know how you do call the person, the woman that doesn't want to obey orders, that doesn't want to obey tasks from her managers, from her boss, from her school teachers, from her counselors. She just having this bad attitude. And that's mainly because issues that just happen in my life. And I'm sure every woman has issues in their lives where they feel that they're not being heard, they're not being seen, so they act out to get that notice, to get that attention from people, even if it's bad attention. But this here, I'm talking about Esther, okay? But before I go into Esther, it's your breakthrough is in your obedience, okay? And I made a video about this before, but sadly, I think I deleted. It was just so much going on in my life before, so I think I deleted that video. But I want to just have a moment to redo this, okay? Because God's spoken to me that a lot of people are not obeying him, they're not having full reverence for him. They're not obeying his word. You're praying for this, but you're not obeying when he gives you instructions. Like a 3-day fast, he gives you instructions. You're asking God for favor among your managers for a promotion. And he tells you, okay, go on the 3-day fast. But you don't. You're like, okay, for the first day, you're like, okay, I tried. Well, that's all I can do, God. You know what? And you still expect God to move on your behalf. Now, that is just a prime example. But many times, especially as women of God, we don't obey when God gives us instructions. He gives us everything in his word, his commandments, his laws. He gives it to us. So we cannot be people of disobedience, okay? We cannot be people of disobedience. We cannot be women of disobedience, because when it comes to reading God's words, we cannot neglect it. It is very highly important. Again, there was one time in my life where I was ministering into my church. I was actually up on a stage using my gifts of ministering and prophesying, of course. So I was being coached. And I know that my pastor, he wanted me to keep going out there and putting myself out. But at the time, I still am. I struggle with being an extrovert. At times, I'm more of an introvert. I'm a private person. I like sticking to myself. And I know there's some of you out there who are actually the same. You like sticking to yourself. You don't like being surrounded by a crowd of people, especially all the time. I may do it for a moment, but it's just so much. I am mindful of spirits. You don't know what spirits people are carrying. And if I'm in a crowd, I really I like being private, okay? I like protecting my peace. I'm just gonna keep it as that, okay? So as an introvert, and as being so empathetic, because I'm also a person of empathy, okay? So whatever you're carrying on and you're telling me your burden, now your burden becomes my burden. And that's a problem, okay? And that's why women, we have to set up boundaries. We have to set up specific boundaries as far as people coming up to us telling us their problems. Like, we cannot have that, okay? You have to understand, hey, I understand what you're going through, but you know what? Right now is not a good time, or I will pray for you, or anything of that matter. Just respect your boundary and don't try to carry on so much burdens or any burdens for that matter, okay? Because just like you're pouring out, you also need to be poured in. That's why reading of the word, God is pouring into you, okay? So be mindful of that. And number one thing, also, that's why we have God for, okay? He tells us to give him his burden. So tell those people to go in prayer and go to God so that you can bring that burden onto him. And most of the times, people don't really want your advice and they don't want your opinion. Most people have a hard time praying. But if you want to be listened to, just go into prayer. That is what he's there for. He wants to listen to you. That is why he's there. There's a time when he speaks and there's a time when he also listens. So go to him with your burden, with your worry. Before you worry, go to him in worship. Go to him in prayer. It's not fair to put your burden onto their lives when they also have things going on, you know? As we go in the book of Esther, we see that she walked in obedience, okay? When Vashti was the queen, the king called her, right? He called her to show off her beauty, okay? She did not want to come forth, even though her husband called upon her. The king is very hard to reach. He doesn't make himself available all the time for his wife to come. And like nowadays we can call someone and boom, they answer the phone in 5 seconds. At that time, they did not have cellular phones. That's why Mordecai was always at the gate waiting for Esther or waiting for her maidens, right? So at that time, they did not have cellular phones. At that time, it was so hard to reach the king because he had his own priorities and tasks and, duties that he had to do as a king. He calls you out and Lord knows how long, because it even took Esther, 30 days to come upon the king, even though he didn't even call her. So he finally reaches out to you and you're denying him of seeing you and praising you. So he cast you out of the palace. Now, before I continue, God also gave me another word of knowledge, right? He will replace you. Okay, one thing about God, he is not afraid of replacing you. He will replace you, okay? Just like as we see Saul, who also worked in disobedience, right? And he was replaced by who? David, even though he was still in the court. Therefore, God also commanded David to respect him. God will really replace you right under your nose. So if you walk in disobedience, especially what Saul did, what Vashti did, you walk in disobedience, he will replace you, my dear. When you become weary of well-doing, when you decide to stop doing ministry because you don't see the benefits of all the other women, you don't see the benefits of having your own car, having your own salon, having your own, finances. When you become weary of well-doing, you will be replaced if you stop doing what God gave you an assignment to do. So as we see how she became disobedient, she was replaced by Esther, right? There was a favor upon Esther. And then when I read the story, I felt like Esther was a woman of genuine. She had a very genuine spirit and kind to her. She was not attitude. She was not in attitude and complaining all the time. So women, we cannot be filled with attitude and complain all the time. We cannot be naggers, okay? Naggers. We cannot be jealous of other women. Now, when it comes to being a woman, okay, and I'm still learning this, we have to work in kindness, because if you don't, you will miss out on your own blessing. Walking in favor, walking in gratitude, walking in sophistication, walking in modesty, walking like the queen, walking like a purposeful woman, walking like who God created you to be. Everything Mordecai told her to do, she did. That is what it means to be obedient to your elders. That is what it means to become obedient to people that have raised you and gives you instructions. Even though it's not about that, it's about God, right? So we're seeing that she obtained favor because she was an obedient servant. She was an obedient servant who became queen. Even in the season of her wilderness, she was obedient. She was not a rebel. She did not do things her way. She did not act like she was a woman of lawlessness. Mordecai told her basically not to tell people who you are, and she obeyed. She didn't run out of the mouth for excitement. We love to blabber. We love to be excited and just tell people everything. Sometimes we gotta hold things in until the appointed time. She obeyed to do a 3-day fasting along with her maidens, and then we see that at the 3-day fasting, she went on to the king, and the king spared her. And then she invited the king to basically a feast. With him alongside Haman, she waited and she put in her request on the second day. Why did she wait to put in her request? And Mordecai spared the king's life because people were trying to basically poison him or kill him. So he remembered what Mordecai did for him. So then he called Haman, and Haman thought it was for him, but it really wasn't. He called Haman into the room, and he was like, what should I do? How can I honor this man? He remembered Mordecai. So I'm like, it's for him to remember Mordecai. He needed that day to remember Mordecai. So God has a plan, okay? He's very strategic, okay? God knows what he's doing. God has a total strategy of what he wants, especially in your life right now as I'm speaking to you. God has a plan for you. God has a plan for your enemies. So you must wait and continue in prayer and wait for the Lord. So basically your breakthrough is in your obedience, okay? We have to remember that, even David became king because he was obedient. He did not get weary in well-doing. Be obedience to the Lord. Your obedience, everything goes out smoothly. But with your disobedience, you're basically resisting God's plan for your life. You're basically coming into resistance of the prayer that you're praying for. What bad thing can come upon obeying God? So Dr. Miles Monroe talked about basically how he just brought his wife a new car. So Dr. Miles Monroe brought his wife a new car. It was like a brand new Lexus, paid off. So as he was driving from the dealer to his office, he saw his employee get out of the bus stop, right? She just got off this bus, and this employee has been working for him for more than 10 years. So he was thinking, wow, this employee comes on time. She doesn't miss work, and she's a dedicated employee. And here I am watching her get off the bus. So God told him, give her your wife's car. So he goes and calls his wife. So she's like, okay, if God told you to do it, you do it. He goes and he gives her the car. So the employee is so thankful. So the following weeks after that, he usually goes one way to his office. I think he said that he usually goes through the side door, but this time his security guards or his security or his wife calls him up and told him to go in front of the door this time, in the front of the building. So he said, but I usually go through the side. She said, no, but this time I want you to go through the front of the building. So he goes into the building, and he got a surprise. I'm not sure if it was a Jaguar, new car that was better than the Lexus. And I heard other stories of even Dr. Juanita Bynum, who says that God kept telling her to give out the car that she just paid off to people, and she just kept doing it, and God would give her something better than what she gave out. As we have to continue to obey the Lord, okay? Because his obedience, there is a plan that's connected. Because Ruth obeyed in the Lord, because Esther obeyed in the Lord, look what happened. Without Ruth, there would have never been Jesus. Even though without God, there would have never been Jesus. But Ruth was part of that plan. So she obeyed. By staying with Naomi, by working in the field, by being dedicated to Naomi's God, that was walking in obedience and trusting that God was going to make a way for her. We have to remain obedient to God's word, just like Esther, okay? Esther was obedient to Mordecai. Esther was obedient to whatever the eunuch told her to do. Esther was obedient to even the king. Anytime you feel a resistance coming, you're going this way, and the spirit of fear just stops you in your track. Just literally tell yourself, if I perish, I perish. Literally, just do it. If God told you to do it, then it's for a reason. He's not going to tell you to do something just for you to suffer and be worse than the situation in you was before. We have to trust in the Lord and remain obedient as servants of God. That's what servants do. So thank you for watching this video, and I pray I'll see you on the next one.